Welcome back, and we're at the Prairie Livestock Expo, and we're having a really good time talking to the various people involved. But today, right now, we're talking with Andrew Dickson. First of all, he's the general manager of the Manitoba Pork Council, and I've known Andrew almost forever, not quite. And at the same time, Andrew is also the chair of this organizing committee. Tell me a little bit. I mean, Brandon, we've got Hog Days, and here we've got Prairie Livestock Expo. So what has changed?
Well, we used to be a Hog Days, and then it became Hog and Poultry Days. And we used to be down at the convention center, and then we moved up to here. And then some years ago, we realized that the same companies that are talking to the hog and poultry people are also talking to the beef guys, the sheep guys, the dairy guys, and so on. So we decided to expand the format a little and call it Prairie Livestock Expo, so that because it's the same companies, so it saved them some staff time and reach a wider audience in terms of essentially the same products and services they offer to other people. So the intent here was to sort of widen it out, and it'll take time because there are other big shows that are more specialized, say for the beef guys or dairy guys and so on, and we'll see how this evolves over time.
Right, and I mean, how many years? This is the third year that it's been Prairie Expo?
Yeah, and so we do it every 2 years, so we alternate with Brandon, and we do this session here in Winnipeg, and we're, as you can see today, we've got over 160 exhibits. We're expecting 700-800 people to come in, and it may not be huge in terms of numbers, but the people actually walking in are making major investment decisions here. There's a lot of significant investment capital walking around the room. And maybe the salespeople and the companies have met many of these people before, but it's a bit of a social occasion too, and people get together and they can see everything in one place. And we have some fun things. We've got a wing eating contest, and we've got a carcass competition. Our Hutterite brethren it's a very competitive little activity, and so it's a bit of a fundraiser as well. So it's a fun day. It'll all be over by 5 o'clock, and people can go Christmas shopping later and go home.
And as we used to say, go home and do the chores.
With automated equipment these days, it's amazing how that chore thing has changed. A lot of stuff now is actually quite sophisticated in terms of you got to look at records, and people are using it on their cell phones. People are checking their barns through cell phones, and the animals are being fed automatically in many barns. But there's still all the animal care stuff has to be going in. In fact, it frees up your time to do the real things, which are to look after the actual care of the animals, so you can pick out the ones that aren't doing so well, get them treated and turn them into productive animals.
You talked about capital walking around this particular expo. Well, you and I have talked, and we've also talked about, if more specifically, about the hog industry, and that there are some things that are really happening that are positive.
Well, we're seeing in hogs, as we're seeing in some of the other species, there's rebuilding going on, so people's facilities are getting older and have to be replaced. And if they're going to, they might have been, say, 500, 600 sow farrow finish operation. Now they're looking at either becoming larger and specializing, or they're going to maybe even double in size from what they're doing existing. We're also seeing, I should also emphasize, it's not just in hogs. We're seeing an expansion in dairy. There's poultry barns going up. The sheep industry is expanding in the province, and some significant expansion. And I think Manitoba is in a unique position in that half our farm income comes from livestock, and there's huge opportunities out there in the world market for meat products. Contrary to some of the stuff you might have heard that we're all moving to become vegetarian, our sales are up. So obviously someone's eating it, and our export markets continue to increase. I was just looking at numbers the other day, and for example, China 10 years ago, we might have sold them $7 or $8 million worth of stuff. Last year, we sold $123 million worth of stuff from Manitoba. Japan is still a very profitable market for us, and it's a steady market. Last year's sales were over $460 million or something, and that's just from Manitoba. So when you add it all up, 90% of our pork production is actually exported out. The United States is still a major market for us. We still send about $260 million worth of pork products into the United States. And the United States is the major exporter in the world. So when you think about that, here we are selling high-value products into a very sophisticated market that has huge production, and we still sell them 2.5 million weanlings.
Wow.
So,
I remember a good friend, I'm sure you knew him just even better, Bill Vogts. I remember when Bill was chairman of Canadian Pork International, because we can't forget how the pork organizations, whether it's the national organization or whether it's your provincial organization and your sister organizations across the country, but this is taking some really coordinated effort on behalf of all those organizations, because I know Bill was out selling. I mean, at that time there wasn't much else except Bill and some staff, right?
well, the thing about pork in the domestic market is it's a mature product in a sense. I don't mean old, but in a sense, but the market's mature. There's only so much you can sell into your domestic market, and if you want your industry to grow, you got to export. And Manitoba's known this since the founding of the province. I mean, we're a small population. We have to export out. Otherwise, we'll never grow. So we're used to that, and we understand the complexities of it. We depend, of course, on national standards. The federal government's role. CFIA is a highly respected authority in international markets. When you get a Government of Canada stamp on your product, that means something in a lot of markets in terms of quality, food safety, value for your product. And Canadian companies use it. In fact, and we're going to upgrade that with our new verified pork label that's coming out, and it'll be part of our new national food safety program called Canada Pork Excellence. So this is all going to be launched in 2019, and we're very hopeful that that'll help improve sales. And if anything, hold on to the sales we got, because we got huge competition from the United States. And in the background, Europe is still a major competitor. So we can't pretend that we've got, like, with all these trade agreements, like the Americans are getting trade agreements as well. So it's very, very competitive.
I remember when the organization started to come on stream, checkoffs, the dreaded word checkoff to producers. At one point, that's what it was, right? I mean, but if it wasn't for that checkoff in part, you wouldn't be doing all these things.
Well, we get very little concerns from our members about the checkoff. I mean, it's the way it's set up is the provincial government essentially gives us like a taxing authority. It's like a levy, and they do it because producers have asked for it, and they continue to support it. And we report back to producers how the money's spent. Producers are in charge of how the money's spent. And so we try to make sure we get the best value we can. I mean, all we can do is assist the industry to do its job, and we do things that it's somewhat difficult for individual companies to do. We do the things that they find difficulty doing, and so we make that work. And usually it's impediments to business and work on government policy, for example, say in the domestic market, like can you build a barn, can't you build a barn, working with local municipalities, that sort of thing. And then on the export side, through Canada Pork International, which is a joint venture between the producers and the processing companies in Canada to promote the Canadian product. And then the individual companies, of course, go out and sell their brands within that umbrella. And, the major processors have offices now in Japan, in South Korea, China, and so on.
You recently were at an opening of a new barn up at Elkhorn, Manitoba. Peter David Wallner, I had a chance to visit with him. He sent me a picture of you and him and George Matheson. But
I was taken with my camera.
Yeah, oh yeah, right, okay. But the thing I want to remark on is the fact that he told me in the interview that it was like 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes, and they were good to go with the building that new barn. I mean, those are things that have actually changed.
Yeah, of course, they had an old permit and that had been prior approved, but they never acted on it. So they built this barn, and it holds about 15,000 finisher pigs, and it's 18 rooms, about 700 pigs per each. They got auto sorters in each room, watering, special mechanical scrapers. There's going to be a real effort to control odor, very sophisticated feeding systems, spray systems to cool the animals in the summertime. And a very solid building. It's made with essentially concrete walls with some plastic sheathing, and I mean that building will last 100 years.
Great. Well, it's so good to talk to you, Andrew, because we've done this so many times, but never exactly in this particular setting and this format. So keep up the good work, and if you're going to keep working, so will I.
Oh, okay. No.
That's Andrew Dickson, the chair of Prairie Livestock Expo, and also the general manager of the Manitoba Pork Council. We are at the Prairie Livestock Expo, and one of our sponsors is Lakeview Insurance, and we'll be back with more.